I walked into my own dining room on Thanksgiving with my left arm in a cast, unable to even lift a fork. 23 family members fell silent as I took my seat. My daughter Sarah looked at everyone calmly and announced that her husband Mark had taught me a lesson. Mark stood up, chest puffed out, declaring I'd forgotten who really ran things in this family now. I smiled quietly, checking my watch. In exactly 10 minutes, everything would change forever. 6 weeks before that memorable Thanksgiving dinner, I had called my family together for what I described as an important announcement. The October air carried the scent of burning leaves through the windows of my colonial-style home in Hartford, Connecticut. I'd chosen a Sunday afternoon knowing everyone would be free from work obligations. My name is Booker Thompson, and at 68 years old, I had built something worth protecting. For 42 years, I'd run Thompson Construction, starting with just a pickup truck and a toolbox. Now, as I prepared to announce my retirement, I watched my family gather in the living room, where my late wife Margaret and I had hosted countless celebrations. Sarah arrived first with her husband Mark and my grandson Tommy. My daughter had inherited her mother's delicate features, but none of her warmth I'd noticed recently. At 41, she carried herself with a rigid posture that seemed more pronounced since marrying Mark 3 years ago. Mark Garrison stood 6 feet 2 inches with the kind of athletic build that peaked in high school and now strained against his polo shirt. His handshake had always been unnecessarily firm, as if constantly trying to establish dominance. Tommy, 16 and quiet, reminded me of myself at that age. He greeted me with genuine affection before settling into a corner chair with his phone. The boy had his grandmother's observant eyes, always watching, rarely speaking. My brothers Robert and James arrived next with their families. Robert, the middle child at 65, had followed me into construction before branching into real estate. James, our baby brother at 62, taught history at the local community college. Their wives, Patricia and Helen, had been part of our family gatherings for decades. The house filled with nieces, nephews, and their children, creating the comfortable chaos of a large family reunion. Once everyone had settled with coffee and Margaret's famous apple cider donuts that I'd ordered from her favorite bakery, I stood before the stone fireplace. The same spot where I'd announced my engagement to Margaret 45 years earlier. I've gathered you all here because it's time for me to make some changes. I began noting how Mark immediately leaned forward, while others simply gave me their attention. After 42 years, I'm selling Thompson Construction. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Robert knew this was coming as I'd consulted him about the business valuation. What they didn't know was the final number. The sale closed last Tuesday. I continued watching faces carefully. Between the business, the commercial properties, and my investment portfolio, the total value of my estate is approximately $8.7 million. The silence that followed was deafening. I saw Mark's eyes widen his hand, reaching for Sarah's knee. She placed her palm over his, and something in that gesture disturbed me. It felt rehearsed, planned. Now I'm not planning on going anywhere anytime soon. I added with a chuckle that only Robert genuinely returned. But I want to be transparent about my plans for retirement and make sure everyone understands my wishes for the future. Mark stood abruptly. Well, Booker, this is fantastic news. Sarah and I were just discussing how you might need more support as you get older. This timing couldn't be better. I hadn't invited him to speak, but Mark continued as if he were chairing the meeting. We should definitely talk about getting you into a more manageable living situation. This house is way too big for one person. And with that kind of money, you'll need professional management to protect it from anyone who might try to take advantage. I appreciate your concern, Mark, but I'm perfectly capable of managing my own affairs. I responded calmly. Of course, Mark said, his tone suggesting otherwise. But at your age, things can change quickly. Sarah sees it all the time at the school, doesn't she, honey? How elderly people can become targets. Sarah nodded slowly. Dad, Mark has a point. There are so many scams targeting seniors these days. Maybe we should look into some safeguards. The room had divided into two camps. Robert and James exchanged glances, clearly uncomfortable with Mark's presumption. Tommy had stopped scrolling on his phone, his eyes fixed on his stepfather with an expression I couldn't quite read. "I've already met with my attorney and financial advisor," I assured them. "Everything is structured properly." Mark reached into his jacket pocket and produced a manila folder. "Actually, I took the liberty of consulting with a lawyer friend of mine. He drew up some documents that would protect your assets while ensuring family oversight. Just standard power of attorney forms." The audacity stunned me. He'd come prepared to take control of money he'd just learned existed. I stood to accept the folder, flipping through pages of legal documents that would effectively hand control of my entire estate to Sarah and Mark. "You took the liberty?" I asked, keeping my voice level. "Someone has to look out for you, Booker. Family takes care of family, right?" "Mark, I think you should put those away," Robert interjected. "This is premature and frankly inappropriate." Mark's face flushed. "I'm just trying to protect my family's interests. Sarah's inheritance shouldn't be at risk because her father is too proud to admit he needs help." "My inheritance?" Sarah asked, and I heard genuine surprise in her voice. "Dad's still very much alive, Mark?" "You know what I mean." Mark snapped at her, then caught himself. "I'm sorry, honey. I just want what's best for everyone." I set the folder on the coffee table. "I'll review these with my own attorney, Mark. Thank you for your concern." What happened next changed everything. Mark grabbed my wrist as I turned away, his fingers digging into the tendons with practiced pressure. "You need to sign these today, Booker. My friend is waiting for the documents." The pain shot up my arm, but I kept my expression neutral. "Let go of my arm, Mark." "Not until you stop being a stubborn old fool." He hissed low enough that only Sarah and I could hear. "You think you're still the big man? Times have changed? Sign the papers." "Mark." Sarah gasped, but she made no move to intervene. I saw Tommy raise his phone slightly, angling it toward us. Smart boy. "Accidents happen to stubborn old men, Booker," Mark whispered. "Would be a shame if you took a fall down those stairs of yours, or had a mishap at one of your job sites." I met his eyes steadily. "Are you threatening me in my own home, Mark?" He released my wrist with a shove that made me step back. "I'm trying to help you, old man. But if you want to do this the hard way, that's your choice." The room had gone silent. Everyone sensed the tension even if they hadn't heard the exchange. Robert started to rise, but I waved him off. "I think we're done for today," I announced. "Thank you all for coming." Mark stormed out, Sarah trailing behind him with mumbled apologies. Tommy lingered, approaching me as others filed out. "Grandpa, are you okay?" he asked quietly. "I'm fine, son." He glanced around, then showed me his phone screen. He'd captured the entire encounter on video. "Just in case you need this," he whispered. After everyone left, I sat in my study examining the bruises already forming on my wrist. 5 dark marks where Mark's fingers had pressed. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through contacts until I found Judge Harold Watson. Harold and I had served on the library board together for 15 years. More importantly, he'd mentioned his concern about elder abuse cases flooding his courtroom. "Harold, it's Booker Thompson. I might need your advice on a delicate matter." As I explained the situation, I absently rubbed my wrist. Mark had made a critical error. He'd shown his hand too early, thinking wealth would make him reckless. He didn't know that 42 years in construction had taught me patience. You don't build lasting structures by rushing. You plan, you prepare, and you make sure your foundation is solid. Before I went to bed, I installed a new app on my phone, one that uploaded videos directly to cloud storage. I also made a note to call my doctor about documenting injuries. If Mark wanted to play games with a stubborn old man, he was about to learn why Thompson Construction had survived 4 recessions and countless competitors. The war for my family's future had begun. Mark just didn't know it yet. The following Monday morning brought the kind of crisp autumn day that made Connecticut feel like a postcard. I met Patricia Coleman at a small diner on the outskirts of Hartford, far from my usual haunts. Judge Watson had recommended her with high praise, describing her as tenacious, discreet, and particularly skilled in financial investigations. Patricia didn't match my mental image of a private investigator. In her early 50s, she dressed like a suburban real estate agent, complete with a conservative blazer and minimal jewelry. Only her eyes gave her away, sharp and constantly assessing missing nothing. "Judge Watson filled me in on the basics," she said after we'd ordered coffee. "But I need to hear everything from your perspective." I showed her the bruises, now purple and green against my pale skin, and shared Tommy's video. She watched it twice, taking notes in shorthand I couldn't decipher. "Your grandson is sharp," she observed. "That video quality is excellent. He caught Mark's grip and your facial expression perfectly. Any judge would see this as assault." "I'm not looking to put my daughter's husband in jail," I clarified. "Not yet, anyway. I need to understand what I'm dealing with first." Patricia nodded. "Smart approach. Men like Mark usually have histories. Give me 48 hours to do preliminary background work. Meanwhile, I recommend you see your doctor about those bruises. Create a paper trail." She slid a business card across the table. "This is Dr. Amanda Chen, a geriatric specialist who works with elder abuse cases. She's discreet and thorough." I pocketed the card. What else should I be doing? Act normal. Don't change your routines. If Mark is planning something, we want him comfortable and careless. She paused, studying me. "Can you do that? Pretend nothing has changed?" "Ms. Coleman, I've negotiated with union bosses, city officials, and corporate executives for 4 decades. I can handle my son-in-law." That afternoon, I visited Dr. Chen, who documented my injuries with professional detachment. She also suggested blood work, mentioning that she'd seen cases where family members used medication to incapacitate elderly relatives. The thought hadn't occurred to me, but I agreed to the tests. 2 days later, Patricia called with her initial findings, suggesting we meet at my home office. She arrived with a leather folder thick with documents. "Mark Garrison is drowning in debt." She began without preamble. $340,000 in gambling debts, mostly to offshore sports betting sites and a few local bookies with questionable connections. I felt my stomach drop. "Sarah doesn't know." "Your daughter's credit is still intact, which suggests he's kept this hidden. But here's where it gets interesting. In the past month, he's been telling creditors that he's about to come into a significant inheritance. Specifically, he's promised full payment by Christmas." The timeline clicked. "That's why he had those papers ready." "Exactly. He's been planning this for weeks, maybe months. He knew about your business sale before you announced it." "How?" Patricia pulled out a photograph. "Recognize her?" The image showed a young woman, mid-20s, attractive in an obvious way. She looked vaguely familiar. "That's Jessica Martinez. She lives 3 houses down from you with her parents. Ring any bells?" "The Martinez family? They moved in about 2 years ago. Nice people. The daughter works at a bank, I think." "She works at your bank, Mr. Thompson. Specifically in the wealth management division. She's been having an affair with Mark for 8 months." I had to sit down. The betrayal felt layered, like an onion of deception. "She's been feeding him information." "More than that. She's been intercepting your mail. Your neighbor across the street has security footage of her taking items from your mailbox on multiple occasions. Bank statements, investment summaries, correspondence from your attorney." Patricia showed me time-stamped photos of Jessica at my mailbox, always when I was at work. "She times it for when your mail carrier delivers, usually around 2 in the afternoon." "What else?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know. "I'm still investigating, but there are some concerning patterns with Sarah. Has she been visiting more frequently, bringing you food or drinks?" I thought back. "She's been stopping by twice a week, usually brings coffee and pastries from that shop downtown. Says she's checking on me since Margaret passed." "I need you to save some of those drinks, seal them in plastic bags. Don't consume anything she brings for now." The implication sickened me. You think my daughter is drugging me? I think we need to rule it out. Your blood work showed trace amounts of zolpidem. That's Ambien, Mr. Thompson. Have you been having trouble sleeping? No more than usual, but I have felt unusually tired after Sarah's visits. Patricia made another note. I've seen this before. Small doses to create confusion, forgetfulness. Build a case for incompetence. Combined with Mark's aggression, they're using a carrot and stick approach. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the yard where Sarah had played as a child, where Margaret had taught her to plant flowers and vegetables. How did I miss this? How did my daughter become someone who would do this? Don't blame yourself. These situations develop slowly. Mark is likely controlling, possibly abusive. Sarah might be acting under duress. What's our next move? Patricia closed her folder. I want to install some discrete cameras in your home with your permission. Just in common areas, nothing invasive. We need documentation of any suspicious behavior. I agreed, and she made arrangements for installation the next day. As she prepared to leave, she turned back. Mr. Thompson, does anyone else have access to your home? Just Sarah. I gave her a key after Margaret died in case of emergencies. I recommend changing your locks. Make an excuse if asked. Also, do you have any trips planned anywhere isolated? Mark mentioned going fishing at my lake property. Why? Patricia's expression darkened. Isolated locations are dangerous for elderly people with valuable estates. Accidents are easy to stage. If you go, I want you wired and tracked. After she left, I sat in my study surrounded by photos of happier times. Margaret smiled from our wedding photo. Sarah beamed from her college graduation. Tommy grinned on his first day of high school. Family was supposed to be sanctuary, not a battlefield. I opened my laptop and began documenting everything, creating encrypted files with Patricia's findings. If something happened to me, I wanted a trail for Tommy to follow. The boy had already shown more loyalty than his parents. That evening, Sarah called. Dad, I'm so sorry about Sunday. Mark was out of line. It's forgotten, sweetheart. I lied smoothly. I was thinking I'd bring dinner tomorrow. That Italian place you love does take out now. That's thoughtful, but I'm meeting Robert for dinner. Another lie, but necessary. Oh. She sounded disappointed. Well, maybe I'll stop by in the morning with coffee. That would be nice, dear. After we hung up, I stared at the phone. Patricia had given me small evidence bags. Tomorrow I'd find out if my daughter was poisoning me on her husband's orders. The thought made me physically ill, but I pushed through the emotion. Thompson Construction had succeeded because I dealt with problems head-on, no matter how painful. I picked up the business card for Dr. Chen and scheduled blood work for the day after Sarah's visit. Then I called my locksmith, inventing a story about losing my keys. By tomorrow afternoon, Sarah's key wouldn't work, and we'd see how she reacted. The chess game had begun. Mark thought he was playing against a feeble old man. He was about to learn that in construction, like in chess, the foundation determines everything. And I'd been laying foundations for longer than he'd been alive. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. Grandpa, Mom, and Mark had a huge fight tonight. She was crying. He mentioned your name a lot. Be careful. I texted back, thank you for letting me know. You be careful too. His response came quickly. I've got your back, Grandpa. Grandma would want me to. Margaret would indeed. She'd always said Tommy was special, that he saw things others missed. Now her wisdom was proving prophetic. In this war for my family's soul, my teenage grandson might be my strongest ally. I secured the house, checking locks and windows with new attention. Tomorrow cameras would record everything. Soon I'd know the full extent of Mark's plan. But tonight I allowed myself a moment of grief for the daughter I'd lost, not to death, but to greed and manipulation. Somewhere in Hartford, Mark was probably celebrating his perceived victory, confident that the old man would crumble. He had no idea that Booker Thompson had survived union strikes, economic downturns, and the loss of his beloved wife. I'd be damned if I'd let a small-time gambler with delusions of grandeur destroy what Margaret and I had built. The war wasn't just beginning, it was about to escalate. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, the trap was set. The cameras Patricia had installed captured everything I needed to know. Sarah's coffee deliveries tested positive for zolpidem, just as Patricia suspected. The footage showed her adding powder to my cup in the kitchen while I was in the bathroom. The methodical way she measured the dose suggested practice. Dr. Chen confirmed my blood levels had increased significantly. "Any higher, and you'd be experiencing serious cognitive impairment," she warned. "This is criminal poisoning, Mr. Thompson." But I wasn't ready to involve police yet. Patricia had uncovered more about Mark's gambling connections, including threats from people who didn't accept IOUs. He was desperate, which made him dangerous but also predictable. When Mark called suggesting a fishing trip to my lake property in the Berkshires, I wasn't surprised. Patricia had predicted he'd make his move before Thanksgiving, needing to show progress to his creditors. "Been too long since we spent quality time together." "Booker." Mark said, his voice dripping false warmth. "Sarah mentioned you haven't been sleeping well. Fresh air might do you good." "That sounds nice, Mark. This Saturday works for me." "Perfect. Just us men like the old days." We'd never had old days. In 3 years of marriage to my daughter, Mark had shown zero interest in bonding until he learned about my money. But I agreed enthusiastically, playing the lonely old widower eager for company. Patricia worked through the night preparing. She outfitted me with a waterproof recording device that looked like a shirt button and a GPS tracker sewn into my jacket lining. Most importantly, she provided a thin life vest that fit invisibly under my flannel shirt. "He'll likely try to make it look accidental," she explained Friday evening. "The lake is deep isolated. You've mentioned you can't swim, right?" "Margaret tried to teach me for years. Never took to it. Sarah knows this." "Then that's his plan. Push you in, watch you drown, play the traumatized witness who tried everything to save you." Patricia checked the vest's straps one more time. "This will keep you afloat, but you need to sell the performance. Thrash Panic go under a few times. Let him think he's winning." "What about backup?" "I'll be positioned on the opposite shore with binoculars and a boat. Deputy Morrison owes Judge Watson a favor. He'll be nearby but out of sight. We need Mark to fully commit to this." Tommy had been my inside source throughout the preparation. He reported that Mark had been unusually cheerful all week, promising Sarah a surprise after the fishing trip. He'd even researched funeral homes on their shared computer bookmarking pages about cremation services. Saturday morning arrived gray and misty, perfect weather for dark deeds. Mark picked me up in his oversized truck country music, blaring. He'd packed enough beer for a fraternity party but had conveniently forgotten food. "We'll grab something on the way back," he said dismissively. "Fishing's about relaxation, not eating." The 2-hour drive gave him time to probe about my will, disguising questions as casual conversation. Had I updated it recently? Did I trust my lawyer? What did I think about living trusts versus traditional wills? I answered vaguely, mentioning I'd been considering changes. His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel whenever I suggested leaving money to charity or setting up education funds with strict parameters. The lake house stood exactly as Margaret and I had left it our last visit 2 months before her heart attack. Mark had never been here, but he walked in like he owned it, helping himself to the expensive scotch I kept in the cabinet. "Nice place, Booker. Bet it's worth a fortune now. Waterfront property's gold these days." "Margaret loved it here. Too many memories to sell." "Memories don't pay bills," he muttered, then caught himself. "I mean, for some people, obviously you're set." I suggested we get to fishing while the weather held. The mist had evolved into light rain, making the dock slippery. Perfect conditions for an accident. Mark had come prepared. As we gathered gear, I noticed he wore new boots with excellent tread, while offering me an old pair from the shed that were worn smooth. He'd disabled the security lights, claiming they'd scare fish. He even insisted on carrying my tackle box, keeping me between him and the water as we walked onto the dock. "You know, Booker," he said as we reached the end, "Sarah worries about you out here alone. What if you fell? Could be hours before anyone found you." "Good thing I'm not alone today," I replied, baiting my hook with steady hands despite my racing heart. We fished in silence for 20 minutes. Mark positioned himself strategically, always keeping me closer to the edge. He'd obviously scouted the location. This section of dock had no rail, just a 40-foot drop into deep water. "Beer," he offered, producing a can from his pocket. "Better not. Medication and alcohol don't mix at my age." "Come on, 1 beer won't hurt. Don't be such an old woman." The insult was calculated to provoke. Instead, I chuckled. Margaret used to say the same thing. Never could get me to loosen up. Mark's face darkened at the mention of my wife. He set down his rod and moved closer. "You know what your problem is, Booker. You think you're better than everyone, sitting on all that money while your daughter struggles. Sarah's never wanted for anything. She wants respect. You treat her like a child making decisions without consulting family. That changes now." He pulled a folded document from his jacket. Even from a distance, I recognized the legal formatting of a will. "Sign this. Save everyone the drama." I pretended to examine it, noting it was dated a week ago, and left everything to Sarah with Mark as executor. "I need my lawyer to review this." "No lawyers." Mark stepped closer, using his size to intimidate. "You sign now, we go home happy. You refuse." He gestured towards the water. "Are you threatening me, Mark?" "I'm trying to help you see reason." He grabbed my shoulder fingers, digging in. "Last chance, old man." I shrugged off his hand and turned away, giving him the opening he wanted. He moved fast for a big man, both hands hitting my back in a savage shove. I flew forward the tackle box, scattering as I hit the water. The cold shocked every nerve. Despite the vest I went under, letting the murky water close over my head. I counted to 3, then surfaced, gasping and flailing. "Mark, help." I thrashed wildly, the perfect picture of panic. He stood on the dock's edge, watching with cold satisfaction. "Should have signed Booker." I went under again, longer this time. When I surfaced, I was farther from the dock, letting the gentle current carry me. Mark pulled out his phone, and I heard him clearly despite the distance. "Sarah, it's terrible your father fell in the lake. I'm trying to save him, but oh God, I think he's drowning. Call 911. His performance was Oscar-worthy. Grief, panic, desperation, all while standing safely on dry land as I drowned 30 feet away. I gave him one more dramatic submersion, then began swimming toward the blind curve where Patricia waited. The boat's motor was muffled, but I heard it. Patricia and Deputy Morrison pulled me aboard, quickly wrapping me in thermal blankets. Through binoculars, we watched Mark pace the dock, occasionally calling my name for the benefit of his recorded 911 call. "He's ransacking your tackle box," Patricia observed. "Looking for something." "The fake will I planted. Dated yesterday, leaving everything to charity except a small bequest to Sarah." Deputy Morrison snorted. "That'll light a fire under him." Sure enough, Mark's panicked voice carried across the water. "Oh, thank God he's got papers here, looks like his will." We watched him stuff the documents inside his jacket, then make a show of searching the water with a boat hook. After sufficient time had passed, he called Sarah again, voice broken with fake tears. "He's gone, honey. I tried everything. The water's too cold, too deep. I'm so sorry. At least he had his will with him. We'll know his final wishes." Patricia recorded everything while I used her phone to text Tommy. "Safe. Plan working. Take care of your mother." His response was immediate. "Knew you were too tough to drown. Mom's freaking out. Mark already talking about funeral arrangements." We waited until Mark left, driving away fast enough to throw gravel. Then Deputy Morrison called in my rescue by a passing fisherman, keeping Patricia's involvement secret. The official story, I'd managed to grab a floating log. and drifted to shore injured but alive. At the hospital, I played up confusion and hypothermia. The removable cast Patricia had procured fit perfectly, making my broken arm look convincing. Dr. Chen, in on the plan, admitted me overnight for observation, giving Mark time to spread his version of events. By Sunday morning, the trap was fully set. Mark had told everyone I'd fallen during a dizzy spell, that he'd risked his life trying to save me. Sarah arrived at the hospital, puffy-eyed, but with steel in her voice. "Dad, thank God you're alive. Mark said you were talking about changing your will right before you fell. Were you feeling pressured?" I pretended confusion. "Will, everything's fuzzy, sweetheart." "Don't worry about it now, just rest. We'll handle everything." The way she said, "handle everything," chilled me. My daughter was already planning my next accident, the fatal one. But she didn't know about the cameras, the recordings, or that her son had been documenting their every move. Patricia visited that afternoon, disguised as a hospital volunteer. Morrison pulled Mark's phone records. He called his bookie 20 minutes after leaving the lake, promising full payment by December 1st. Also, Jessica Martinez bought a one-way ticket to Costa Rica for next week. Let me guess, first class with Mark's credit card. He's already spending money he doesn't have yet. I shifted in the hospital bed, adjusting my fake cast. What about the will he found? My contact at the courthouse says he tried to file it this morning. Probate clerk told him you need to actually be dead first. He didn't take it well. Everything was proceeding perfectly. Mark thought he'd eliminated me once and could do it again. He had no idea that his victim was very much alive, very much aware, and very much prepared for war. Tommy visited that evening alone. "Mom and Mark are planning something for Thanksgiving. I heard them talking about having you declared incompetent. Mark said your confusion at the hospital proves you're losing it." "Good," I said, surprising him. "Let them think that." "Grandpa, are you really okay? This is getting scary." I took his hand with my good one. "Your grandmother used to say that fear is just wisdom wearing work clothes. We're almost at the end, son. Trust me." He squeezed back. I recorded their whole conversation. Mark also mentioned something about hiring someone to break into your house, make it look like you can't live alone safely. When? Tuesday night. You're supposed to be at Uncle Robert's for dinner. I smiled. Then I better make sure I'm at Uncle Robert's for dinner. After Tommy left, I lay in the hospital bed planning the final phase. Mark had attempted murder, and I had it all recorded. Jessica Martinez was fleeing the country with embezzled funds. Sarah was actively poisoning me. Any reasonable person would call the police immediately. But I wasn't feeling reasonable. I was feeling paternal. My daughter was still in there somewhere under Mark's influence. If I could expose him completely publicly, undeniably, maybe I could save her. Maybe our family could heal. Thanksgiving dinner would be perfect. The entire family gathered, Mark confident in his victory, Sarah playing the dutiful daughter. They'd announced their plans to care for me, never knowing that justice was just a doorbell away. I closed my eyes, feeling Margaret's presence. "Almost there, my love," I whispered. "I'm bringing our daughter home." The heart monitor beeped steadily, marking time until the revelation. 4 days until Thanksgiving. 4 days until Mark's world collapsed. 4 days until my family learned that Booker Thompson might be old, but he was far from finished. The week before Thanksgiving passed in a carefully orchestrated dance of deception. I returned home from the hospital with my arm in the removable cast, playing up the injury whenever family visited. Mark's attempted break-in Tuesday night was captured perfectly on Patricia's cameras, showing 2 men he'd hired, fumbling with my locks before fleeing when a neighbor's dog started barking. The footage went straight to Deputy Morrison's evidence file. Sarah increased her visits, arriving daily with coffee I pretended to drink, and food I discreetly disposed of. She'd developed a new routine of suggesting I looked tired, documenting my confusion in a notebook she thought I didn't notice. Her performance might have fooled someone who hadn't raised her. but I saw the tells Margaret had always caught, too. The way she touched her ear when lying, how her voice pitched higher during manipulation. "Dad, are you sure you're taking your medications correctly?" she asked Wednesday morning, finding me accidentally wearing mismatched shoes. "Maybe I should organize them for you." "That might help, dear. I do get mixed up sometimes." Her smile reminded me of Mark's calculating and cold. When had my little girl learned to wear such masks? The daughter who'd cried over injured birds and volunteered at the senior center now plotted to steal from her own father. Tommy continued his reconnaissance, reporting that Mark had met with a lawyer specializing in elder law. They'd prepared competency hearings, paperwork ready to file the Monday after Thanksgiving. Mark had also been shopping for luxury items online, including a boat he'd named Easy Money in his saved cart. Wednesday evening, Catherine called. My ex-wife and I had maintained a civil relationship for Sarah's sake, though we'd rarely spoken since Margaret's funeral. "Booker, I'm worried about Sarah," she began without preamble. "She called asking strange questions about your mental state during our marriage, whether you'd ever shown signs of dementia in your family history. What did you tell her?" "The truth. That you were sharp as a tack, and your mother lived to 96 with all her faculties. But Booker, the way she reacted, it was like I'd ruined something important." I made a decision. "Catherine, I need your help. Can you come to Thanksgiving?" Sarah didn't invite me. She said it was Mark's family only this year. "I'm inviting you. There are things happening you need to know about." I gave her a condensed version of events, leaving out the attempted murder, but emphasizing Mark's control over our daughter. Catherine listened in growing horror. "That explains so much," she breathed. "Sarah's been different since she married him. Harder, less empathetic. I thought it was just maturity, but—" "Will you come?" Wild horses couldn't keep me away. "What do you need me to do?" We strategized for an hour. Catherine would arrive unexpectedly, claiming she'd misunderstood the invitation. Her presence would disrupt Mark's script and provide another witness to whatever unfolded. Thursday morning. Thanksgiving Day dawned crisp and bright. I dressed carefully in my best sweater, the one Margaret had given me our last Christmas together. The fake cast went on last a reminder of Mark's cruelty and my own deception. Patricia called as I was leaving. "Everything's in place. Judge Watson will arrive at exactly 4:15 with the officers. Morrison has the warrants ready. The evidence packages are comprehensive." "What about Jessica Martinez?" "Arrested at the airport last night trying to board her flight. She's already trying to cut a deal. Mark doesn't know yet." Perfect. I drove to Sarah and Mark's house, a McMansion they couldn't afford in a neighborhood built on pretense. Mark's truck sat in the driveway next to Sarah's sedan, and several other vehicles I recognized as belonging to his family. Inside the house smelled of turkey and tension. Mark's relatives had already arrived, loud and boisterous in the way of people trying too hard to seem successful. His brother Dave, a used car salesman with cocaine eyes, clapped me too hard on my good shoulder. His sister Linda, married to her fourth husband, made sympathetic noises about my injury while eyeing my watch. Sarah bustled in the kitchen, directing operations with military precision. She'd inherited Margaret's cooking skills, if not her warmth. The dining table was set for 20 Mark, at the head like a king surveying his domain. "For whom?" "Booker." Mark boomed, playing the concerned son-in-law. "How's the arm still giving you trouble?" "Getting by," I said, noting how his eyes tracked my movements, looking for signs of impairment. Tommy sat in the living room with his cousins, but his attention stayed on the adults. He gave me a subtle thumbs up, which I took to mean the recording devices he'd planted were working. The boy had inherited his grandmother's strategic mind, along with her eyes. My brothers arrived together, Robert and James, presenting a united front. They'd been briefed on the basics, warned to stay alert, but act normal. Their wives, Patricia and Helen, immediately offered to help in the kitchen, giving them reason to circulate and observe. "Booker looks good for someone who almost drowned," I heard Linda whisper to Mark. He's tougher than he looks, Mark replied tightly. Won't be for long. As we gathered for dinner, I did a mental count. 23 family members, including Mark's elderly parents, who seemed bewildered by the chaos. His mother, Gloria, patted my cast gently. You poor dear. Mark told us about your accident. Such a blessing he was there to save you. I smiled at the fiction. Yes, a blessing. We took our seats, Mark, insisting I sit where everyone could see my struggle with the cast. Sarah had pre-cut my turkey, presenting it like you would for a child. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. Before we begin, Mark announced, standing with his wine glass, I want to make a toast to family, to recovery, and to knowing when it's time to let the younger generation take the reins. His relatives murmured agreement. My family stayed silent. Tommy recorded everything on his phone, pretending to text. I attempted to eat left-handed, deliberately clumsy. Food dropped onto my plate, gravy splattered my shirt. Mark's satisfaction grew with each fumble. Maybe we should get you one of those special forks, Linda suggested. You know, the ones they make for people who can't manage regular utensils anymore? That's thoughtful, I replied mildly, seeing Robert's jaw clench. 15 minutes into the meal, the doorbell rang. Sarah frowned. Everyone's here. Who could that be? I'll get it, Mark said, eager to play host in what he considered his future inheritance. Catherine stood on the porch holding a pie and wearing her most innocent expression. Happy Thanksgiving. Sorry I'm late. Traffic was terrible. Mark's face cycled through confusion, anger, and forced politeness. Catherine, we weren't expecting you. Sarah called last week about coming. Didn't she tell you? Catherine breezed past him, every inch the gracious ex-wife. Booker, darling, what happened to your arm? The disruption was perfect. Mark couldn't refuse her entry without seeming churlish, but her presence clearly agitated him. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, face pale. Mother, what are you doing here? Visiting family on Thanksgiving, sweetheart. Is that so strange? Catherine took the empty seat I'd insisted we save directly across from Mark. Her presence shifted the dynamic, providing a witness he couldn't control or intimidate. Conversation resumed awkwardly. Mark tried to steer discussion toward my incidents, but Catherine deflected each attempt with stories of my past competence. She reminded everyone of the buildings I'd constructed, the business I'd built, the employees I'd supported through decades. Remember when you solved that union dispute in '94? She asked me. Everyone said it was impossible, but you found a way. Different times, Mark interjected. People change. Age catches up with everyone. Does it? Catherine's smile was razor sharp. Booker seems perfectly sharp to me. The meal continued, tension thick as gravy. Then at exactly 4 o'clock, Mark stood again, tapping his spoon against his glass. I have an announcement, he declared, chest puffed with importance. Given recent events and Booker's declining capacity, Sarah and I have decided it's time to take a more active role in managing family affairs. What kind of role? Robert asked quietly. Mark produced documents from his jacket, the same elder law papers Tommy had reported. We've consulted with specialists. It's clear Booker needs supervision. These papers will ensure his assets are protected while he gets the care he requires. I haven't agreed to any of this, I said. That's the point, Booker. You're not capable of making these decisions anymore. Mark's mask finally slipped, revealing the predator beneath. Your confusion, your accidents, the way you can't even feed yourself properly. It's time to stop pretending you're still the man you were. Sarah stood beside him, united in their coup. It's for your own good, Dad. We just want to take care of you. By drugging his coffee. Tommy asked suddenly, his young voice cutting through adult pretense. The room exploded. Sarah went white. Mark turned purple. Everyone started talking at once. What are you talking about, son? I asked, playing my part. Tommy pulled out his phone. I have videos, Grandpa. Mom putting powder in your drinks. Mark meeting with lawyers talking about your money. Everything. Mark lunged for the phone, but Robert intercepted him. I don't think so. You little brat, Mark snarled at Tommy. You don't know what you're talking about. I know you pushed Grandpa in the lake, Tommy continued steadily. I know you hired people to break into his house. I know about Jessica Martinez and the gambling debts. Each accusation hit like a hammer blow. Mark's relatives drew back, sensing the tide turning. His mother Gloria began to cry quietly. These are lies, Mark stammered. The boy's obviously been coached. The doorbell rang again. This time Sarah answered it, perhaps hoping for escape. Instead, she found Judge Harold Watson flanked by 2 uniformed officers and Patricia Coleman. Mrs. Garrison, Judge Watson said formally, I have warrants for your arrest and your husband's. Mark tried to run bowling over chairs in his desperation. He made it 3 steps before Deputy Morrison, who'd been waiting in the kitchen, stopped him with professional efficiency. Mark Garrison, you're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft. As the officers cuffed him, Mark's bravado crumbled. It was all Sarah's idea. She said her father was loaded, that we deserved the money. I was just trying to help my wife. Sarah's legs gave out. Catherine caught her mother instincts overriding everything else. Don't say anything, sweetheart. We'll get you a lawyer. But Sarah looked at me, tears streaming. I'm sorry, Daddy. He said he'd hurt Tommy if I didn't help. He said terrible things would happen. I didn't mean... I never wanted... Save it for your attorney, Patricia advised. But I heard truth in my daughter's voice for the first time in months. The arrest played out before stunned relatives. Mark's family scattered like roaches when lights come on, abandoning him to his fate. My family closed ranks, protective and supportive. Judge Watson approached me as the chaos settled. Booker, you all right? I removed the fake cast, rotating my perfectly healthy arm. Never better, Harold? The room went silent again, everyone staring at my miraculous recovery. The cast was fake, Gloria whispered. As fake as your son's concern for my well-being. I replied, not unkindly. She'd raised a monster but didn't deserve cruelty. Tommy hugged me fiercely. You did it, Grandpa, just like you said. We did it, I corrected. Couldn't have managed without my guardian angel. As the police led Mark and Sarah away, I noticed the time. 4:15 exactly, just as Patricia had promised. Timing was everything in construction and in justice. Catherine lingered after everyone else fled or filtered out. What happens now? Now we try to save our daughter, I said. She was coerced, manipulated. With the right lawyer and her cooperation testifying against Mark, maybe we can minimize the damage. You'd do that after what she did. She's still our little girl, Catherine. Lost and confused, but ours. Margaret would never forgive me if I didn't try. Catherine nodded, tears in her eyes. I'll help however I can. As the house emptied, I stood in Mark's dining room surveying the abandoned feast. Pride goeth before a fall, the Bible says. Mark's pride had led him to attempt murder in broad daylight, confident in his superiority over an old man. But this old man had built a successful business, raised a family, and survived loss that would break younger souls. Mark had gambled everything on a rigged game, never realizing the house always wins when the house has patience planning, and a grandson willing to risk everything for justice. Thanksgiving dinner had been ruined, but my family was saved. That seemed like a fair trade to me. The scene in the dining room after the arrests was like a battlefield after the fight has moved on. Overturned chairs, scattered papers, abandoned plates still full of food growing cold. Tommy and I stood in the wreckage while Judge Watson finished with the officers outside. Should we clean up? Tommy asked, practical, even in shock. Leave it, I said. This is a crime scene now. Patricia will want to document everything. Robert and James had ushered their families out, promising to check on me later. Catherine had followed the police car carrying Sarah, determined to find the best criminal defense attorney in Hartford. The house felt hollow without its occupants, like a theater after the audience leaves. Patricia entered with her camera, methodically photographing the scene. That went better than expected, she said. Mark's outburst was perfect. Multiple witnesses heard him blame Sarah, then watched her claim coercion. His credibility is shot. "What happens to my mom?" Tommy asked, the first crack in his composure showing. Patricia's expression softened. "That depends on several factors. If she cooperates, fully testifies against Mark, and we can prove coercion, she might avoid jail time. Probation, community service, mandatory counseling. But she did poison your grandfather, Tommy. That carries consequences." The boy nodded, adult understanding in his young face. "I know, I want my real mom back. The one from before Mark." "We all do," I assured him. Judge Watson returned, looking satisfied. "Morrison says Mark is already trying to make a deal, claiming he has information about other elder abuse schemes, wanting to trade for a lighter sentence." "Typical," Patricia snorted. "Rats and sinking ships." We spent the next hour securing the scene and planning next steps. Tommy would stay with me for the immediate future, his home now a crime scene, and his mother in custody. I welcomed the company. The big house felt less empty with my grandson there. As evening fell, Patricia pulled me aside. "There's something else you should know. Jessica Martinez gave up everything. Mark wasn't just planning to steal from you. He had a list of elderly targets in your neighborhood, all with substantial assets. Your situation was supposed to be his proof of concept." The revelation sickened me further. How many other families might have been destroyed if we hadn't stopped him? "Make sure Morrison knows," I said. "Those families deserve warning." That night, Tommy and I ate Chinese takeout in my kitchen, the planned Thanksgiving feast, a casualty of justice. He picked at his lo mein, while I nursed tea that I'd made myself, no longer trusting any drink I hadn't prepared. "Grandpa, can I ask you something?" "Always." "When did you know about Mom and Mark?" I considered my answer carefully. The moment Mark grabbed my wrist that Sunday. But suspecting and proving are different things. I needed evidence, not just intuition. "You were pretty amazing today. The fake cast, the timing, everything, like a movie." "Life isn't a movie, son. In movies, the hero always wins clean. Real life is messier. Your mother is still going to face serious charges. Mark will go to prison, but your family is broken. That's not a perfect victory." Tommy pushed rice around his plate. "Do you think Mom ever loved him?" "I think she loved the idea of him. Mark could be charming when it suited his purposes. He probably seemed like everything she thought she wanted, confident, decisive, promising security. By the time she realized what he really was, she felt trapped." "He hit her," Tommy said quietly. "She tried to hide it, but I saw the bruises. That's when I started recording things. I thought maybe if I had proof I could help her leave." My heart broke a little more. This boy had carried adult burdens far too long. "You did help her, Tommy. Your evidence will show the court she was a victim too. That matters." We finished dinner in companionable silence. Later, as Tommy headed to the guest room, he paused at the door. "Grandpa, what would Grandma have done?" I smiled sadly. "She would have seen through Mark in 10 seconds flat. Your grandmother had a gift for reading people. But she also would have forgiven your mother instantly and fought like hell to bring her home." "Then that's what we'll do." "That's what we'll do." The next morning brought lawyers, reporters, and chaos. The story had leaked elderly millionaire fakes injury to expose murder plot. My phone rang constantly with interview requests I declined and family members checking in. Catherine called from the courthouse. "Sarah's bail hearing is Monday. The lawyer thinks we have a good chance if we can demonstrate she's not a flight risk and was under duress." "Whatever she needs," I said. "Has she said anything?" "She's cooperating fully. Gave the police everything about Mark's plans, his abuse, the threats against Tommy. She's broken Booker. Whatever spell he had her under, it's shattered." I thought about spells and how they work. Mark had isolated Sarah, made her dependent, used her maternal instincts against her by threatening Tommy. Classic abuser tactics wrapped in a husband's smile. The gambling debts had made him desperate, and desperate men do terrible things to the people they claim to love. Robert arrived around noon with groceries and brotherly concern. "Hell of a Thanksgiving book." Though I have to admit, watching you pull off that cast was pretty spectacular. I learned from the best, I reminded him. Remember when Dad convinced that building inspector he was dying to get extended permits? Robert laughed. Clutched his chest and everything. Inspector signed off just to get away from the drama. His expression sobered. Speaking of Dad, he'd be proud of how you handled this, protecting family while serving justice. I hope so. We spent the afternoon planning Robert helping me organize Sarah's defense fund while keeping the business implications in mind. Several clients had already called concerned about stability. Nothing destroyed a construction company faster than rumors of family drama affecting operations. We'll manage, Robert assured me. Focus on Sarah and Tommy. The business survived without you before. It'll survive this. That evening, Tommy showed me something on his laptop. He'd created a spreadsheet tracking every incident over the past 6 months. Dates Mark had been violent times. Sarah had seemed afraid instances of financial manipulation he'd overheard. I was building a case, he explained, in case we needed to get a restraining order or something. I never thought it would end up like this. The thoroughness impressed me. You've got your grandmother's strategic mind and your mother's attention to detail. That's a powerful combination. Think it'll be enough to help Mom? Combined with everything else, yes. The prosecutor will see she was as much a victim as I was, just in a different way. Tommy closed the laptop, looking older than his 16 years. I used to hate you a little, he admitted, for divorcing Grandma Catherine for marrying Grandma Margaret so fast. Mom said you abandoned us for a new family. That must have been hard to hear. But then I got older and saw how you treated everyone. You never missed my games or school stuff. You treated Grandma Catherine with respect. You loved Grandma Margaret but still made room for all of us. I realized Mom was wrong, maybe jealous. You didn't abandon anyone, you just loved more people. I had to clear my throat before responding. Your mother was hurt when Catherine and I divorced. She was young, confused. Sometimes that hurt calcifies into resentment if you don't deal with it. Is that why she was vulnerable to Mark? The insight startled me. Possibly. Looking for the father figure she thought she'd lost, finding a controller instead. Psychology is complex, Tommy. People make choices for reasons they don't always understand themselves. We talked until late, grandfather and grandson processing trauma together. When he finally went to bed, I sat alone in my study surrounded by photos of happier times. Margaret smiled from our last anniversary portrait, eternally young and wise in silver frame. I saved her my love, I whispered to the photo. Saved them both. Now comes the hard part, healing. Monday would bring bail hearings and legal proceedings. But tonight, in my quiet house with my grandson safe upstairs, I allowed myself a moment of satisfaction. Mark Garrison had thought me weak, foolish, easily manipulated. He'd learned otherwise in the most public way possible. The war was won, but the peace would require just as much strategy. Fortunately, I'd spent a lifetime building things that last. Rebuilding a family couldn't be much harder than constructing a skyscraper. Could it? The 10 minutes between my arrival and the doorbell felt like hours. Mark continued his performance, regaling relatives with exaggerated tales of my declining capacity. He'd moved from the dining room to the living room, gesturing dramatically, as he described finding me confused and disoriented at the lake. I risked my own life trying to save him, Mark declared, one hand over his heart. If I'd been 30 seconds later, we'd be at a funeral instead of Thanksgiving dinner. His mother, Gloria, dabbed at her eyes. You're a hero, son. Booker is lucky to have you. I sat quietly, my fake cast prominent playing the role of the grateful but addled elder. Inside my phone vibrated with a text from Patricia. ETA 4 minutes. Get ready. Tommy caught my eye from across the room, where he pretended to be absorbed in his phone. He gave an almost imperceptible nod, confirming our synchronized recordings were capturing everything. The boy's courage astounded me. At 16, He was risking his relationship with both parents to pursue justice. Sarah bustled between kitchen and dining room, the perfect hostess masking the attempted murderer. She'd changed since her arrest into a burgundy dress that hid the bruises Tommy had mentioned. Every time she passed Mark, she flinched slightly, a tell invisible to those not looking for it. "Sarah, honey," Mark called out, "why don't you tell everyone about the plans we've made for your father's care?" My daughter froze mid-step, a serving platter trembling in her hands. I think we should focus on dinner, Mark. There's time for that later." "Nonsense." Mark's voice carried an edge of command. "Family should know family business. Tell them about Pine Grove." Pine Grove. I knew the name, an upscale retirement community that was essentially a prison for inconvenient elderly relatives. Once committed, residents rarely left except in hearses. Sarah set down the platter carefully. "We've been looking at facilities that specialize in memory care. For if Dad needs more help than we can provide at home." "When, not if," Mark corrected. "Let's be honest here. Booker's had 2 major incidents in 6 weeks. The confusion, the accidents. It's not safe for him to live alone anymore." "I feel fine," I protested weakly, playing my part. Mark's laugh was condescending. "That's the problem, Booker. You don't recognize your own decline. That's why we need to make these hard decisions for you." Catherine shifted in her chair, clearly fighting the urge to intervene. We'd agreed she'd wait until after the revelation to show her cards, but Mark was testing everyone's patience. "What kind of decisions?" Robert asked, his tone deceptively mild. Mark produced his phone, scrolling to saved images. "Look at this place. Private room gardens, medical staff on site. Costs a fortune, but that's what Booker's money is for, right? Taking care of him properly." He passed the phone around like evidence, each family member examining the glossy photos of Pine Grove's marketing materials. What they didn't see were the Yelp reviews. I'd read families complaining about unexplained injuries, mysterious medication changes, residents dying within months of admission. "Looks like a hospital," James observed. "It's not," Mark insisted. "It's dignified care for someone who's earned it. Booker built his empire. Now it's time to enjoy the fruits of his labor." "By being locked away, quoi?" Catherine asked, breaking protocol. Mark's face darkened. "No one invited your opinion, Catherine. You gave up your say in Booker's life 30 years ago." "Mark," Sarah protested, but he waved her off. "Someone needs to say it. This woman abandoned her family, and now she shows up pretending to care. Please." Catherine's smile was arctic. Interesting perspective from someone who pushed an elderly man into a lake. The room went silent. Mark's face cycled through emotions: shock, rage, calculation, denial. "That's a serious accusation," he said slowly. "I saved Booker's life. Everyone knows that." "Do they—" Catherine pulled out her phone. "Because I have some interesting videos that suggest otherwise." It was a bluff, but Mark didn't know that. The real evidence would arrive with Judge Watson, but Catherine's misdirection served its purpose. Mark turned to Tommy, suspicion dawning. "You little spy," he snarled. "What did you tell her?" Tommy looked up from his phone, meeting his stepfather's glare steadily. "The truth." Mark lunged forward, but Robert and James were ready, stepping between him and Tommy. The facade of family harmony shattered like spun glass. "Everybody calm down," Robert commanded, every inch the older brother. "Mark, sit down before you do something else you'll regret." "Regret? I'm trying to protect this family's future." Mark's control slipped further. "Do you have any idea what I've sacrificed? What I've endured, Sarah's father sitting on millions while we struggle, while we make do with scraps?" "We're not struggling," Sarah said quietly. "We have good jobs, a nice house." "A house that's mortgaged to the hilt," Mark roared. "Credit cards maxed out. And why? Because your precious father keeps his fortune locked away like some fairy tale dragon." There it was, the truth spilling out like poison from a lanced wound. Mark's relatives shifted uncomfortably, seeing their golden boy revealed as desperate and grasping. "Is that what this is about?" I asked, dropping some of my confused act. Money. Everything's about money, old man. Everything. You just never had to learn that because you always had it. I started with nothing, I reminded him. Built everything with these hands. Spare me the bootstrap sermon. You got lucky. Right place, right time, right connections. Meanwhile, the rest of us have to scramble for crumbs. Tommy had started a new recording capturing Mark's unraveling. Sarah pressed herself against the wall, trying to become invisible as her husband's mask disintegrated. So you decided to take what you thought you deserved, Catherine pressed. I decided to secure my family's future. If that meant managing a confused old man's assets, so be it. Better us than some charity or distant relative. Or better you than the gambling debts. The question came from Tommy, quiet but devastating. Mark went white. What did you say? $340,000. That's what you owe, right? To some very unpleasant people who don't accept payment plans. How could you possibly? The doorbell rang. Everyone froze, a tableau of family dysfunction interrupted by that simple sound. Mark looked at the door like it might explode. Sarah made a small, wounded noise. I'll get it, Mark said, but his bravado had evaporated. He walked to the door like a man approaching the gallows. Time slowed as he turned the handle. I saw his body tense when he recognized Judge Watson, saw him try to slam the door only to find Deputy Morrison's boot preventing it. Saw the exact moment he realized his game was over. Mr. Garrison, Judge Watson said formally, loudly enough for everyone to hear. I have warrants for your arrest and your wife's. Please step aside. Mark tried to run. It was pathetic, really, a middle-aged man in boat shoes scrambling through his own living room like a panicked animal. He knocked over a lamp, scattered magazines, crashed into his own coffee table. Morrison let him get 6 feet before tackling him efficiently, professionally, without excessive force. Mark Garrison, you're under arrest for attempted murder, elder abuse fraud, and conspiracy to commit theft. You have the right to remain silent. As Morrison recited the familiar words, Patricia Coleman entered with another officer. She surveyed the scene with satisfaction before approaching Sarah. Mrs. Garrison, please come with us. Don't make this harder than necessary. Sarah looked at me, mascara running the careful hostess mask finally gone. Daddy, I'm so sorry. He said he'd hurt Tommy. Said he'd make it look like an accident. I couldn't. I was so scared. Don't say anything else, Patricia advised. Wait for your attorney. But Sarah couldn't stop. The coffee, the pills, I hated it. Every time I watched you drink it, I died a little inside. But he showed me pictures of what happened to people who crossed his friends. Awful things. And Tommy, I couldn't risk Tommy. Catherine moved to her daughter maternal instinct, overriding everything. Shh, baby. We'll sort this out. Just go with them quietly. Mark, now cuffed, made one last attempt at control. She's lying. It was all her idea. She came to me, said her father was loaded and going senile, said if we worked together. Interesting, Judge Watson observed. That's not what Jessica Martinez told us. According to her, you've been planning this since before you married Sarah. She was just a means to an end. The mention of Jessica broke something in Sarah. She turned to Mark with dawning horror. Jessica, our neighbor. Jessica. Don't be stupid, Mark snarled, but guilt painted his face. You were sleeping with her. Oh my God, you were sleeping with her while making me poison my father. You monster. Sarah lunged at him, but the officers intervened. As they led her away, she looked back one more time. Tommy, baby, Grandpa will take care of you. Be good. I love you so much. I love you too, Mom. Tommy called back, tears streaming down his face. Mark got no such farewell. His relatives scattered as the police led him out, abandoning him like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Only his mother, Gloria, remained staring at the son she'd raised with dawning horror. Is it true? She asked me quietly. Did my boy try to kill you? I removed the fake cast, showing her my perfectly functional arm. I'm afraid so, Gloria. I'm sorry you had to find out this way. She aged 10 years in 10 seconds. We spoiled him. His father and we gave him everything, never made him earn anything. This is our fault, too. Mark made his choices, I said gently. Whatever mistakes you made raising him, you didn't create a murderer. He did that himself. As the house emptied of police and witnesses, Tommy and I stood in the ruins of Thanksgiving dinner. Plates of congealing food, overturned chairs, the detritus of a family explosion. Now what? Tommy asked. Now we clean up, I said. Then we figure out how to put our family back together. Patricia lingered, making final notes. You did well, Booker. Both of you. The recordings Tommy made combined with Jessica's testimony and the physical evidence Mark's looking at 15 to 20 years minimum. Sarah's another story. With cooperation and evidence of abuse, she might avoid jail time. That's what matters, I said. Getting Sarah helped keeping Tommy safe, making sure Mark can't hurt anyone else. Patricia nodded. I'll file my report tomorrow. Judge Watson wants to debrief once things settle. This case is going to set precedents for elder abuse prosecution in Connecticut. After she left, Tommy and I began the slow process of cleaning up. We worked in companionable silence, grandson and grandfather, restoring order to chaos. As we filled garbage bags with the remnants of dinner, I thought about the nature of family, how it could wound and heal in equal measure. Grandpa, Tommy said suddenly, I don't want to live with Mom when she gets out. Not right away. Is that terrible? No, son. It's honest. Trust takes time to rebuild. Your mother will understand. Can I stay with you? Just until things get normal again? I pulled him into a one-armed hug, this remarkable boy who'd risked everything for justice. You can stay as long as you want. This house has been too quiet anyway. We finished cleaning as darkness fell, transforming the crime scene back into a home. Tomorrow would bring lawyers and difficult conversations. But tonight we'd survived the revelation, exposed the truth, and begun the long journey toward healing. As we turned off the lights, Tommy asked one more question. Do you think we'll ever have a normal Thanksgiving? I considered it. Probably not. But maybe we'll have something better, an honest one. We left Mark's house together, grandfather and grandson, walking into an uncertain but truthful future. Behind us, the empty rooms held echoes of deception and revelation. Ahead lay the harder work of forgiveness and rebuilding. But first we'd stop for Chinese food. After all, we'd never did get to eat that turkey. 6 months after that explosive Thanksgiving, I stood in a Hartford courthouse, watching my daughter take the witness stand. Sarah had lost 20 pounds and gained a decade of wisdom in her eyes. She wore a simple gray suit, no jewelry, except her grandmother's pearl earrings that I'd given her for protection. Margaret always said pearls absorbed tears and transformed them into beauty. State your name for the record, the prosecutor began. Sarah Elizabeth Garrison. Her voice was steady, clear. Therapy and truth had strengthened it. Mrs. Garrison, please tell the court about your relationship with the defendant, Mark Garrison. Sarah's testimony over the next 3 hours was devastating. She detailed Mark's escalating control, the financial manipulation, the physical abuse carefully hidden from view. She produced photographs of bruises, text messages threatening Tommy, recordings of Mark describing what his creditors would do if not paid. When she described being forced to drug my coffee, she broke down. My father trusted me, and I betrayed that trust. I'll live with that guilt forever. But I was terrified. Mark showed me pictures of what happened to another gambler's family who couldn't pay. Their teenage son. What they did to him. She couldn't continue. The jury, 7 women and 5 men, leaned forward as one. Several had tears in their eyes. Mark, sitting at the defense table in an ill-fitting suit, tried to project innocence, but succeeded only in looking desperate. His attorney, a public defender overwhelmed by evidence, did his best on cross-examination. Mrs. Garrison, isn't it true you're testifying against your husband to save yourself from prison? I'm testifying because it's the truth, Sarah replied. I've already pled guilty to my crimes. I'm prepared for whatever sentence the court gives me. This isn't about saving myself. It's about making sure Mark never hurts another family. Tommy testified next, poised beyond his years. He presented his evidence methodically, videos, recordings, the detailed timeline he'd constructed. When asked why he'd started documenting abuse, his answer was simple. My grandmother Margaret told me once that evil grows in darkness but dies in light. I wanted to shine a light. The prosecution presented Patricia Coleman's investigation findings, Jessica Martinez's confession, the physical evidence from the lake. They played the recording of Mark pushing me his calm call to Sarah, claiming I'd drowned his celebration with creditors afterward. The defense's case was brief and hopeless. Character witnesses who barely knew Mark, alternative theories that crumbled under scrutiny. Mark himself chose not to testify, perhaps the only wise decision he'd made in years. The jury deliberated for 2 hours, guilty on all charges. Mark's face went gray as the judge read the verdict. Attempted murder in the 2nd degree, elder abuse, fraud, conspiracy. The sentences would run concurrently, 22 years in maximum security. As court officers led him away, Mark looked back once. Not at Sarah or the family he'd destroyed, but at me. Pure hatred burned in his eyes. I met his gaze steadily until he disappeared through the doors. Some men learn from their mistakes. Others just learn to hate better. Time would tell which Mark would become. Sarah's sentencing came 2 weeks later. The same judge who'd shown no mercy to Mark took a different tone with my daughter. He'd reviewed the evidence of abuse, the psychiatric evaluations confirming PTSD, the letters from Tommy and me requesting leniency. Sarah Garrison, you committed serious crimes against your own father. However, the court recognizes you were victim as well as perpetrator. I sentence you to 5 years probation, 300 hours of community service at elder care facilities, and mandatory therapy for the duration of your probation. Any violation will result in immediate incarceration. Sarah sobbed with relief. Catherine and I flanked her as we left court, a united front for the first time in decades. The reporters shouted questions we didn't answer. This wasn't their story anymore. 3 months into her probation, Sarah began volunteering at Hartford Senior Center, the same one where she'd volunteered as a teenager. She started by serving meals, gradually earning trust enough to lead activities. The director, unaware of her history, at first praised her dedication and empathy. She has a gift for spotting seniors who might be experiencing abuse, the director told me during a visit. Like she has radar for it. I didn't tell her why. Some truths were Sarah's to share when ready. Tommy thrived in the stability of my household. His grades improved, he joined the debate team, even started dating a nice girl from his chemistry class. We established routines, Sunday dinners, homework at the kitchen table, driving lessons in the high school parking lot. One evening, as I taught him to parallel park, he asked, "Do you think Mom and I will ever be normal again?" "Define normal, Twy," I countered, watching him check mirrors. "You know, like before Mark, when she was just Mom, not someone I had to protect myself from." I considered carefully. "You can't go backwards, son. But you can build something new, maybe stronger for having been tested. Your mother's doing the work. When you're ready, you'll do it together." He nodded successfully, sliding between 2 cones. "Grandma Margaret would be proud of how you handled everything." "She'd be prouder of you. You saved us all, Tommy." The Silent Strength Foundation launched 6 months after Mark's conviction. Patricia Coleman agreed to serve as director, bringing her expertise to help other families trapped in similar situations. We focused on education, legal support, and safe intervention strategies. Our first major case involved an elderly woman whose grandson was slowly transferring her assets while keeping her sedated. Patricia's team gathered evidence, coordinated with law enforcement, and extracted the woman safely. The grandson got 10 years. The grandmother lived her remaining years in peace. By our first anniversary, we'd helped 17 families. Each success felt like redemption, transforming our pain into purpose. Sarah joined the board once her probation officer approved bringing survivor perspective to our strategies. Catherine and I found an unexpected friendship in shared grandparenthood. We'd never rekindle romance, but we discovered something perhaps more valuable: partnership in healing our fractured family. Sunday dinners at my house became tradition, Catherine bringing dessert, Sarah cooking Margaret's recipes, Tommy regaling us with teenage adventures. One such Sunday, as we cleared dishes, Sarah pulled me aside. "Dad, I need to tell you something." My heart clenched. Had Mark somehow reached out from prison? "What is it, sweetheart?" "I've been seeing someone, another survivor from my therapy group. His ex-wife tried to poison him for his life insurance." I studied my daughter. Color had returned to her cheeks. The nervous bird movements had calmed. She looked like herself again, but tempered, refined by fire. "Are you happy?" "I'm cautious," she admitted. "But yes, happy. He understands trust is earned, not given. We're taking it slow." "Then I'm happy for you. When do I meet him?" "Maybe next month. I want to be sure first." I kissed her forehead. "Whenever you're ready." The second Thanksgiving after Mark's arrest, we gathered again. Smaller group this time: Sarah, Tommy, Catherine, Robert, and Patricia James, and Helen, a few cousins. No drama, no hidden agendas, just family sharing a meal and gratitude. As I carved the turkey with both fully functional arms, Tommy proposed a toast. To Grandpa Booker, who taught us that real strength isn't about confrontation. It's about patience, planning, and protecting the people you love. And to Grandma Margaret, Sarah added, who protected us even after she was gone, through the wisdom she left in all of us. We drank to that apple cider for those in recovery wine, for those who could enjoy it safely. The conversation flowed naturally, punctuated by laughter and gentle teasing. Normal, or as close as we'd likely get. After dinner, as others watched football or played board games, I stepped onto the back porch. The November air was crisp stars, visible despite city lights. I felt Margaret's presence not as ghost or memory, but as the love she'd woven into all of us. "We made it, my love," I whispered. "Bent but not broken, still standing." A hand touched my shoulder. Tommy bringing me coffee he'd made himself. "You okay, Grandpa?" "More than okay, son. I'm grateful." We stood together, grandfather and grandson, watching our family through the windows. Imperfect, scarred, but genuine. The money that had nearly destroyed us now funded healing for others. The pain that had separated us had ultimately brought us closer. "Want to know something?" Tommy asked. "I'm glad it happened. Not the bad parts, but what came after. We're stronger now, more honest." Wisdom from the mouths of babes. Or rather, from a young man who'd earned his wisdom through trial by fire. "Your grandmother used to say that coal becomes diamonds under pressure," I told him. "I think she'd say we're all diamonds now. Rough cut, maybe, but genuine." We went back inside to warmth and family. The evening continued with stories and games, dishes, and cleanup, feeling like blessing rather than chore. By the time everyone left, the house felt full, even in its emptiness, seasoned with love and laughter. As I prepared for bed, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, old fears surfaced. Then I read it. "Mr. Thompson, this is Gloria Garrison. I wanted you to know I visit Mark every month. He's angry, bitter, blames everyone but himself. But I keep going, hoping someday he'll understand what he threw away. Thank you for your grace during the trial. Not many men would have been kind to the mother of someone who tried to kill them. God bless you and your family." I texted back. "Healing comes in many forms, Gloria. Keep visiting him. Even bitter soil can bloom with enough patience. You're welcome in our prayers. Small mercies, unexpected connections. The ripples of that Thanksgiving continued spreading, touching lives in ways we'd never anticipated. Before sleep, I performed my nightly ritual checking locks, setting alarms, habits born of trauma, but maintained from wisdom. The house was secure, family-safe, future, bright if uncertain. In my bedroom, Margaret smiled from her portrait. I smiled back, finally at peace with all that had transpired. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to help others escape their Mark Garrisons. But tonight, I rested in the knowledge that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's survival recovery and the choice to transform pain into purpose. Mark had sought to destroy an old man for money. Instead, he'd forged a family into something unbreakable. If that wasn't justice, I didn't know what was. The cast was fake, but the healing was real. And that made all the difference. As sleep took me, I thought I heard Margaret's voice, gentle as always. "Well done, my love. Rest now. Tomorrow's work will wait." Indeed it would. But tonight, Booker Thompson slept the sleep of the just, surrounded by invisible shields of family truth and love. The old wolf had won not through violence, but through patience, planning, and the courage to trust those who'd earned it. In prison, Mark Garrison raged against walls of his own making. In Hartford, his victims built bridges to tomorrow. The contrast said everything about choices, consequences, and the nature of true strength. The war was over. The peace, hard won but real, had finally begun. And that, as Tommy would say, was the best plot twist of all, that a story beginning with betrayal could end with such abundant grace. Margaret would be so proud. Of all of us, but especially of the grandson who'd reminded an old man that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to appear weak. And the greatest wisdom is understanding that love, not money, is the only inheritance that truly matters. What would you do if someone you trusted betrayed you for money? Would you seek revenge or focus on healing? Share your thoughts below. And if this story touched your heart, please like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that survival and grace can triumph over greed and betrayal. Thank you for joining me on this journey. And remember, the strongest foundations are built not with force, but with patience, truth, and love.